It's fair to say that HBO's The Last of Us has made video game fans fall in love with the story, and it's all thanks to the visual and special effects. They are truly something to admire about the show. Have you seen the live-action clickers? In different teasers, a shot of the clickers for The Last of Us appears out of nowhere, but what makes people jump is the fact that the creature's face is covered in sickening yellow and green fungus growth, and its mouth is smeared with blood and makes the clicking sounds. You know, the ones from the game. And I'm not gonna lie, the clickers actually look pretty amazing and hyper-realistic. But even though almost every teaser showed a brief glimpse of the creature, that's all it took for me to know that these live-action clickers would scare even the toughest viewers. And that's mainly because the creators chose not to use CGI as much as they could have. Also, fans have said that the show's zombies are some of the most terrifying in TV history, especially the clickers, the third stage of the infection. I'm sorry, The Walking Dead. You see, at this point, the fungal growth has completely covered the host's head, making them blind and almost making their hearing and sense of space better. Now, you might think it would have been easier to use computer-generated imagery to make the complex headpieces for the clickers, but that's not what the show's creators had in mind. Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann wanted to use prosthetics instead. On the show's official podcast, Mazin said they tried to make the clickers look like the ones in the popular video game. And, well, according to them, if they jumped right into a CGI character, it would have started to feel like it wasn't there. Is that a jab at the Mouse Enterprise? And they really wanted to find prosthetics that could turn someone into a clicker. Luckily, they found great entertainers who could move and sound like clickers. But while the creators are getting all the praise, the real fans and critics are praising the show's designer, Barry Gower, for making prosthetics that are so detailed and realistic. One person recently tweeted a picture of the show's zombies, saying that the prosthetics in The Last of Us look amazing. This led to a long thread of nothing but praise for the show, and from one fan expressing the prosthetics as being out of control, others nodded in agreement and said that the best decision was to give the clickers prosthetics in the show. But these fans aren't the only ones praising the hyper-realistic prosthetics. Minhaz Ahmed of Fandom Wire also called the show a masterpiece of practical effects, and he said that Gower's work was nothing short of phenomenal. Ahmed added that clickers were terrifying and effective because of their attention to detail and realism. That's because the show's creators decided to use prosthetic makeup and special effects on actors instead of CGI, which has clearly paid off in spades. And according to him, the prosthetic makeup used on the actors who play the clickers is so natural and convincing that it's almost impossible to tell where the makeup ends and where the actor begins. And I'll have to agree with Ahmed on this one. The Last of Us using practical effects for the clickers is actually paying off. If you take a look at the behind-the-scenes photos of actors and clicker costumes, you'll see that the HBO series is using more old-fashioned ways to scare people, which is better for a video game adaptation. The thing is, The Last of Us is like the Wild West after the end of the world, which would make CGI look out of place in this setting. I know CGI is usually used for special effects, but The Last of Us using a more traditional scare instead actually makes sense. After all, CGI can sometimes get close to the uncanny valley, and some things in a modern show or movie stand out more than bad special effects. On top of this, the live-action clickers in the show look way too real, and honestly, it's creepy how much they look like their video game counterparts. The impressive set photos and costumes also show that co-creators Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin put a lot of time and effort into paying tribute to The Last of Us's source material. And just like the original Star Wars trilogy, I think the series will be much better if they stick to using practical effects. But a change tease for The Last of Us makes it sound like something might be worse. We saw Connor Stanhope from Smallville playing Infected Man Stage 5, which goes beyond the 4 known stages of infection from The Last of Us games. Now, if you remember the video games, the stages of cordyceps cordyceps infection are runner, stalker, clicker, and bloater, in that respective order. We are also introduced to the shamblers in The Last of Us Part 2, but they aren't the 5th stage. Instead, they're an alternate 4th stage. While the Rat King is a creature that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the infection stages. Clickers will be scary in The Last of Us just like they were in the game, but the setup from Part 2 of the games could potentially grow HBO's The Last of Us, as the show could go deeper into parts of its universe that haven't been seen before, and adds more characters, plot points, and stakes. And while the powerful clickers have even more potential in the live-action adaptation, there is one thing you can't deny. Getting clickers right is crucial to The Last of Us. You see, a few important things need to happen for The Last of Us to work as the most authentic adaptation possible. Aside from the relationship between Joel and Ellie, which is probably the most important thing, getting the infected and the world as a whole to feel dangerous is also very important. The creatures are also part of what sets the franchise apart from other zombie-style survival stories, like in Dawn of the Dead and The Walking Dead. People become flesh-eating monsters because of a virus, as in most zombie movies and shows. But in The Last of Us, the infection comes from a fungus, and what makes it so real and scary is the fact that cordyceps is a real fungus that does have the ability to change insects into zombie-like creatures. And this makes it different from the other zombie viruses that are more common in the mainstream media. In The Last of Us, cordyceps gives its host a much more earthly look, with colorful growths and a mushroom-like look. This contrasts most zombie movies and shows, where the zombies look thin, pale, and rotting. On top of this, the unique sound that gives the clickers their name and the way they look set them apart right away from almost every other zombie movie and TV show on the market. As for the part about them feeling dangerous, they've got that part covered as well. As we saw in episode 2, just a few clickers are enough to give an assault rifle Joel a hard time, which shows how dangerous they really are. On top of this, there are a few other types of mushroom people in the games that haven't been introduced yet on the show, but the way the clickers were handled in episode 2 suggests that the next episodes could feature some scary, dangerous, and really memorable clickers. And even though we've only seen the 3rd of 4 stages, the live-action clicker encounters in the games are scary because they frequently create a terrifying atmosphere. And like I said before, what makes the live-action clickers in The Last of Us stand out from other zombie shows is a bold choice made by the creators to use real, practical effects for the mushroom people.